Hola. Hello, everybody. Good evening, good afternoon, good morning, wherever you are. We're back. Yes, this is the second time we're going live this week. Like I mentioned on Tuesday, this week unofficially has a theme where we're talking all about
Like I mentioned on
career breaks
Tuesday, this
and
week
sabbaticals.
unofficially has a theme where we're talking all about like I mentioned on
career breaks
Tuesday, this
and
week
sabbaticals.
unofficially has a theme where we're talking all
Do
about
you, do you have a tab open on YouTube?
this week unofficially has a
I
theme
do
where we're
not, but I do
talking
hear an
all
echo.
Do you have a tab open on YouTube?
this week unofficially has a
I
theme
do
where we're
not, but I do
talking
hear an echo.
all
Let me see. Okay, how about now? Let me see if is there a way to mute myself? Maybe.
You can mute yourself in StreamYard.
Perfect.
Okay. So I don't know if the audience could hear that feedback, but I definitely could. Um, it's better now. Okay. Well, so this week, like I said, unofficially, we had a little bit of a theme about taking a sabbatical. And my guest today took a sabbatical, and guess what? It changed her life. So we're going to see if she can get back in here and tell y'all exactly how it did that. Mm, let's see. Okay, there she is. Say hello.
There we go. Hello? Testing.
Okay,
All
I
right.
think we're good now. I think we're good now. All right, Jamilah, go ahead and introduce yourself to the folks.
Sure. So, hey everyone. My name is Jamilah Mena. I grew up in LA for the most part, but my family is originally from Honduras. Grew up around Garifuna Honduran parents, and so I've always had sort of an international upbringing since as long as I can remember. And now I'm saying hello to y'all from Costa Rica. Been digital nomading since October of last year. So.
Okay. Now, when did you take your sabbatical?
So officially October, November of last year is when I took my sabbatical from my 9 to 5. I was actually abroad already and was on a work assignment for my 9 to 5 in Brazil, and then decided to stay in Latin America. I already had my things in storage and had been thinking about it, and actually did Exodus Summit a couple years ago, and so the timing just seemed perfect.
Okay. And so why did you feel like you needed a sabbatical? What was going on in your life at that time?
Yeah, so I didn't have the words to describe it at the time, but now that I'm reflecting and had the time to think about it, was definitely going through burnout and just wasn't feeling like I was aligned at all. And I think that the timing worked out again because I was already planning on doing so. And so when I left my 9 to 5, I said, let me, take time and focus on me. I was fine financially. And so stayed in Latin America, started off in Brazil, and then hopped over to Colombia after that.
Okay. And did you have a plan for your sabbatical, or was it more of, I just need to stop going to this job? Or did you have a detailed plan for how you were going to spend that time?
I had a plan in terms of knowing sort of what to think about when moving abroad and having done Exodus Summit. But in terms of what I was going to do when I was in Brazil, Colombia, hadn't had that plan mapped out. But I am glad that I went through that process through Exodus because at least I was thinking about sort of visas and what to have saved up to make it happen. So I think because I had that preparation when I decided to take that leap and gave my notice, everything kind of aligned in that way. So yes and no to answer your question, but I think Exodus was really helpful just to kind of have an idea of how to go about it.
And when you gave your notice, how was that received?
Whew. I think depending on who I talked to, the allies that I had at the company were already in conversation with me and were kind of already encouraging me to at least take vacation. And so they were supportive. I think other folks did not receive it well. But I think at the end of the day, I had to do what was best for me and my health at the time. And so I'm glad that I did it at the time that I did. I don't know how much longer I could have held out at the company. So.
And your employer did not offer any kind of sabbatical or career break, did they?
They did not, no. And I looked into that as well, at least not for the employees in the US. So it was a global company in other areas of the world that was an offer, but not for us. So
Okay.
at the time,
Okay.
I don't know if that's changed since I left. So.
And so how long did your sabbatical last, or are you still on it?
So it depends on how you define it. So I think for me, it lasted until I decided to launch my own venture in January of this year, because I went back to quote unquote working, although it doesn't really feel like work. But in terms of not having to report to anyone, including myself, up until January of this year, I would say.
Okay. Okay. And you, on your sabbatical, you were in Colombia, you were in Brazil, anywhere else did you go?
Panama, Puerto Rico, and then now Costa Rica. So mostly LATAM.
Okay. Okay. All right. If y'all got any questions about her break, drop those in the chat. Somebody did want to know, where are you in Costa Rica? Like, are
I'm
you
in,
in the urban area, beach, forest?
I'm in San Jose, so mostly rainforest and volcanoes. So including an
Okay.
active one right now. So.
Well, that's the beauty of Central America, is the active volcanoes. Okay. So you were burned out, and really you could not last much longer. Um, and it just so happens that you had attended Exodus Summit, because I wonder, had the seed not been planted by Exodus Summit, would your solution to what you were feeling at work, I wonder, would that have been a sabbatical, or would that have ever crossed your mind? But as luck would have it, that seed had been planted. You took some time off. Now, did you plan for your sabbatical to be a specific amount of time?
I think to be honest, originally planned just a couple of months. And then the original plan was to go back to a legal job, whether it be in-house at a company where it was currently, not at that company, but just in-house in tech, or working remotely for a startup, because that would give me location flexibility, until a lot of employers started requiring folks to go back to the US. So that did not become an option. So originally it was going to be 2 months. And then I was going to go back to a 9 to 5. And then I decided, after a lot of meditation, prayer, to just launch my own venture instead, to give me more flexibility.
Okay. And can you talk a little bit about the kind of work you did before your break?
Yeah, so I was, or I guess I still am. My license is still active, an attorney. I was in-house at a global tech company, which allowed me the opportunity to even be in Brazil working. And I guess going back a bit further, as I said, right, grew up in LA, but then also, because my family is Honduran, spent summers abroad. So I always had this idea of wanting to be in an international sector. So even when I decided to be a lawyer, I thought I would be an international lawyer, did not know what that meant, right? It was like first in my family, a lot of things. And so I thought it was the dream, right, to be an attorney at a global company and be able to travel through work. But the travel was just a vehicle to continue to do work, even in another place. And so it was not exactly what I expected. But yeah, to answer your question, was a lawyer at a tech company. My focus generally, and that's why I'm able to do what I do now, is representing companies and also investors in investment transactions. So.
Okay. All right. I think that is what you mentioned is important, because often we think, oh, but if I could travel, that would make this all better. Or if, I got more money, that would make this all better. And it really does not address the core issue that's sparking the dissatisfaction.
Yep.
Um, so now you decided you were planning for 2 months. I guess give or take, you kind of hit that number, and then you decided not to go back to a traditional 9 to 5. Can we talk about why?
Yeah. So I don't mean to keep bringing up Exodus and also your channel. Funny, I should mention I started following you before I did Exodus, and it was always a goal of mine to live abroad, whether that be through an employer, which clearly did not work out, but that was also something that I knew was just on my heart. So, in thinking about, do I go back to a traditional 9 to 5, even if that means remotely, and still kind of like at the whim of the employer, or do my own thing? Honestly, it was just like a lot of meditating, a lot of journaling, prayer as well. And I feel that mentors who, like I said before, were in line with what I was envisioning supported me as well. And they said, hey, you can always go back to if it doesn't work out, what have you. So I tried to work through that fear of what are people going to think and is it going to work out? And then just decided, hey, I have enough of a nest egg to make this happen. So got a business coach and started Nemedy Ventures. And I'm sure we'll talk about like what that looked like. But it was a lot of meditating and journaling and just believing that I had the skill set to make it happen.
And I am curious, what are some of the fears that you had as you considered creating your own business?
I think the first, and if I'm honest, one that comes and goes, it's not as heavy on my mind as it was initially, is more so what are my current colleagues going to think? What are other people in the profession going to think? Since the legal profession is pretty, I don't want to say traditional, but I think there's one way of doing things within it. And so that was on my mind. Also, can I sustain myself doing this? Imposter syndrome, like what value add do I have to offer folks? So I'd say those are the three main things that were kind of a huge issue initially, and now they're still kind of the saboteur, if you will, right? Like still shows up, but not as blatantly as before. So,
Okay. Now, can you talk a little bit about your process because you're a lawyer, and I've had multiple conversations with women who have like law degrees or they're an accountant, things to me that seem obvious that you can find a way to work for yourself and live abroad. But often the folks I talk to don't necessarily see that. And so I'm curious about how you arrived at these are the skills I have. This is what I like to do. How can I make money to support myself?
yeah, I think, well, I'll answer it in two ways. I think first, yes, there is an issue because of jurisdictional differences, right? Like if I'm licensed in the US, I can't just show up and pretend to understand Colombian law, for example. And so that was present when I was thinking about how to bring the skill sets together. And I think what I was most excited about was helping startups fundraise. And I feel like that is jurisdiction independent, right? You can do that wherever with the right support. And so when I was thinking about building the operational processes, all of these things with my current consultancy, partnerships were super helpful, partnering with local lawyers as well, who are mission driven. I think that's super important, but also, again, like have the local knowledge. So I think it is possible, but you have to, again, respect, right, that you can't just bring US law and try to apply it everywhere else. So yeah, I guess I understand sort of why there could be difficulty, but if you partner with the right folks, you should be fine.
Okay. And so what exactly do you do now?
Yes, so I can go into Nemedy Ventures. So now I'm founder and CEO of Nemedy, and we provide start to finish fundraising consulting for female founders of color globally. What does that mean? So it's a 3-step process. The first step being helping with pitch development, which is the presentation you give to investors about your business so that they can show interest. And that's a lot that we do on the front end, because a lot of folks, myself included, when I started doing this work, don't sort of understand what investors are looking for. And then a lot of my past experience with legal due diligence comes in too, just making sure the company has an understanding of, what investors are going to be asking for from a legal perspective. So we prepare them there. The second step is connecting startups, founders, entrepreneurs to investors in our network. I do a good job of, I'd like to think of making sure that the investors are mission driven. I think that's important. And then third is, once the founder starts their process of fundraising, I connect them to lawyers who will do most of the heavy lifting, if you will. The aspects of the law that I'm not too excited about, and I kind of stay on more as advisor. So I've been able to kind of take the bits and pieces that I like about the law, continue to do that, and then delegate to other people in other ways. So it's been great.
Like what you described sounds like something that there is a great need for, but it would never have occurred to me that like you could make a business that does that. So that's very cool.
Oh yeah, and I think too, in this space, at least back in the Bay where I was before I went to Brazil, I think that there are a lot of accelerators and incubators, but again, it's still so, I don't want to say people are trying to gatekeep, but it's just such a uncovered space. And so I'm trying to make it accessible by also having education modules, because I didn't know about it before I started representing a lot of these folks. So just want to, make it much more accessible through education too.
Okay, and can you talk a little bit about that? Because there may be somebody who is here tonight who has a business that could really be something if they could tap into uh, investors and that sort of thing. You said incubators, and what was the other word?
Accelerators. Yeah.
Accelerators. What are those?
Yes, good question. Again, I didn't know any of this before I was representing a lot of these folks, but an incubator essentially helps get your idea to a stage where you're business ready, right, or able to launch. And so they start off with, literally, you just wrote something down on a napkin, if you will, and you want to launch that business. And so incubators help get you the support to get your idea to business launch ready. So it's kind of really super pre-early stage. And then you have accelerators where it's like, all right, you have some traction, you have some numbers, you have some customers, and now you want to get to the next stage of your business. And so again, still super early stage, but these organizations or businesses, if you will, some charge money up front, others take like a stake in your business, so they charge in different ways, but those are kind of the two different players. And I feel like my consultancy kind of sits in between the two, because I've seen folks who are past the idea stage, but they're like, all right, cool, I need like a lot of capital to get this off the ground. And then other folks who, okay, I have some customers and I also still need capital to get it off the ground. So I kind of lie like in the middle of those two.
Okay. All right. That was very helpful for me to understand. Okay. So excuse me. Now, how does somebody, well, how does somebody know that they're to the point that they could work with you and your company? Like, how would they know, oh, it's time for me to try and get some investors? How do they know that they need somebody like you?
That's a good question. And I've been trying to fine tune my marketing materials to make that clear for folks. I think the very first, I don't want to say screener, but just criteria, if you will, and that's loosely defined too. I still want people to talk to us and have a screener call. We want at least a year of revenue coming into the company, or if not, at least 6 months of you testing your product or your service to show, hey, I have like these, test clients and it works, just to show that it's past that idea stage that I mentioned in the beginning. It's not just like, okay, I just woke up yesterday and I want to try this idea. You have at least a year of customers, or B, you've been testing it, whether it be with, friends and family, what have you, to show that, hey, this has potential. I think that's the very first. And then second, we work with all industries. I feel like folks think because of my background, I only work with tech-backed companies, and they can be tech-enabled, honestly, right? Like, can be brick and mortar, like the next Sweet Green, if you will, right? So I want folks to know that we are trying to, again, the whole point is access, right? So I don't want to focus just on one industry for now. So I'd say those two things are important. The first two criteria, and also, whatever industry. And, at least one female founder on the founding team as well.
Okay. All right. Now, we did have a question because you mentioned getting a business coach. What was your process for acquiring a business coach, and how did they help you launch your business?
That's a good question. Actually, Sharita, she's been on your channel before, was helpful. I chatted with her because, again, I was chatting with a lot of folks who have lived abroad, and I mentioned my business idea even before I left my last company. So it was like already simmering. And so she suggested I connect to this business coach who is amazing, also focuses just on female founders. And I think what was helpful is really the mindset, to be honest. Sure, she has all of these ideas about sales and all of the technical things, but I think helping me maintain confidence in the mindset and what it is that I'm doing, that the folks that I want to help, the clients that I want to serve are out there. I just got to find them or reach them. I think was helpful. So Sharita recommended business coach, and I can put their details, I guess, in the chat after, if that's helpful.
Yeah, I think most people they ask for referrals from folks they know. That's one of those things that it's probably best to do it that way. Okay. So you have been doing this, or you started your company in, did you say January?
Yeah. So I started at least building operationalizing it, and then I launched in March of this year. So super early. It's like 2 months in.
Okay.
Or
All
three, I guess.
right. And if somebody has heard what you've had to say today, and they're like, that she sounds perfect for what I need to get to grow this business that I have. How can somebody tell whether or not they are a good client, they are a good match to be working with you?
Yes. So definitely schedule what I call funding breakthrough call, where I talk through what it is, as I said before, you've done at least in the past 6 months to a year. And then we get a sense of how much you want to raise and where you are in your process. And that's at nemediventures.co. You can go to the contact link and then schedule that on my Calendly. Honestly, again, right, like, you have this great idea, you have some traction, and you're just trying to figure out, even if it's you just want to raise a friends and family round, like, that's totally fine. It doesn't have to be this huge, $5 million whatever VC round. We help all kinds of different rounds. There's someone I'm helping in Colombia who's trying to raise 15K, right? So I just want to make it clear, right? You don't have to be trying to raise there don't have to be a bunch of zeros behind what you're trying to raise. But I think the first step is just scheduling that call. And it's at nemediventures.co contact page. So at least a year of revenue, if not at least 6 months of testing your product would be helpful.
Okay, and all of the contact information is in the description of this video. And I want to back up a little bit and talk about your sabbatical. Did you fully unplug? Because I don't know, this is striking me as a very short turnaround. Maybe you didn't need that much time off, but do you feel like you were really able to unplug and give yourself some space? Because basically, your sabbatical was a couple of months. A lot of people believe that you need to take a year off. You need to take at least 6 months off. Do you feel that you were able to do what you needed to do to recover from your burnout in just 2 months?
Ooh, that's a good question. No, honestly, like, I think I'm gonna keep it 100. Like, I understand why people suggest more time, because I think that there are certain things that come up when I see, for example, posts on LinkedIn that are triggering in terms of my experience at work. And I feel like that means that there's still like some healing that needs to be done there. I think that not going back to a 9 to 5 is part of me continuing that healing, even though it's not necessarily continuing a sabbatical without working on something. But yeah, if I'm being honest, I think I could have taken more time before launching into the next thing.
And do you think you'll take another break? Or like, does the way that you've set up your life now, does it allow you to not let things get as bad as they were previously?
Definitely yes to the second question, to the latter. I think I don't foresee myself working like 80 plus hours a week ever again. Like that's just like my own internal boundary. And so I think that is a step in the right direction for sure. In terms of another break, I think right now, solopreneur on paper, but I have a lot of advisors in the network who are supportive of what I'm doing. And I think that that helps in terms of delegating. I have not thought past July of this year, to be honest. So I just know I'll be in LATAM. But if and when that is necessary, I think that I have operationalized it enough to the point where I can pass it off to someone else for a short period. So.
Okay, and let's talk about the choice of LATAM. The world is a big place, but you chose to stay in Latin America. You want to talk about that choice?
Yeah, so I think I felt most at home in Colombia. Here in Costa Rica, still kind of adjusting to San Jose. As I described before, my family's from Honduras, Garifuna, Honduran, and so Afro-Latina, and so I pretty much blended in to some extent in Colombia. If I spoke Spanish, they'd say, you're from somewhere in the country. We don't quite know where. Can't place it because my accent is that different, but. So I at least want to start here, and I have plans to eventually, go to the continent as well. So this is just the beginning, but I think I chose here because it felt most like home, and I was already in Brazil. And so far, the reception has been great. I think and maybe you can speak to this too, being in Mexico. I feel like if I speak English, I get one reception versus Spanish, and still navigating sort of those differences. But so far, it's been great. So. No complaints.
I think one of the things is how prominent is the Afro population. So like when I moved to Honduras, and I don't know if I knew at the time when I moved to Honduras about the Garifuna population, but I remember it was literally my first day in the country. And this woman was so exasperated with me, like, why can't you speak Spanish? And I'm confused as to why she's expecting me to speak Spanish. And I got that when I went to Colombia as well. My Spanish was not what it is now when I visited. And they were like, girl, what is wrong with you? Why aren't you coming with the Spanish? Whereas in Mexico, in El Salvador, it's more of like, oh, you speak Spanish. But and Mexico is a very large country, and a lot of people don't realize that they have an Afro-Mexican population. So if I'm seen as not being from a place, it's like, oh, you speak Spanish.
Yep.
But in a place where they got folks who look like me, they're like, girl, what is wrong? Why aren't you coming with it? That's been my experience.
I can relate.
Okay. Excuse me.
Thanks for hopping on today, even though you're not feeling well.
Yeah. Okay, so we talked about your break and how you probably could use some more time, but maybe, and I feel like it might have been, because would you say that the idea of working for yourself kind of was always there?
It sure was. Yeah. And I was already doing this work pro bono before. And so I was like, why not charge for it? Like it's a value add. And so, so yes, it's definitely, I mean, I don't want to go as far back as, selling lemonade as a kid, but I don't know. I've always had this like entrepreneurial spirit. And so it was just a matter of when and just finding the right time. And even though, to your previous question, I had been planning things through Exodus, it seems like things were thrust upon me. I felt like I was ready because I was already in that mindset. So it worked out.
Very cool. Very cool. I think the work that you're doing is amazing. Now, I am curious whether you were concerned about this, because in recent years, particularly in the US, there has been pushback for funding and uh, business help that was specifically aimed at Black women. You know, did that figure into your decision making at all?
I think it did. And I probably should have added this in this story when I decided to stop the sabbatical and go into my business. It was right around the election where I decided to stay abroad. Yes, I'd already left my company and I had every intention of going back, and my things are still in storage, right? So, and then the election happened. And so I think, and it's probably on my website too, that the attacks on what's happening now, and I'm trying to be correct or whatever since we're on YouTube, but yeah, I think that it further propelled what I was doing, and I quite frankly don't care. I still use whatever hashtags I need online to beat or try to beat what it is that's happening. So yes, I think it was a factor. It wasn't the only factor, but I think the election played a role too as well.
Okay. Now you said the magic word. Your stuff is in storage.
Yeah.
What's your
Yeah.
what's your plan about that, Miss Ma'am?
I have no idea. Like I said, I haven't thought past July. I know y'all encourage us to travel light, so that's what I've done. But also, I think at some points it will become more expensive to keep things in there than just to pay for them to remove them. So I think I might do that. There's only one item in there, which is like my trunk with a bunch of memorabilia, like my baptism dress when I was like 1 year old, that I'll probably keep in there. But I think I've been putting off handling that and other things in the Bay Area, and people too.
That yeah, no, that is what happens. Because I get it, you when you put those things in storage, you thought you'd be back for them.
Yeah.
And now it's looking like that's not going to be the case. I will just say the longer you put it off, the worse it is going to be. So you need to make a plan for if you like, let's say you don't want to go back to the US, like I don't. I am trying my best not to. Then maybe you get somebody, like if you really don't care about what happens to the rest of that stuff, you're like, that is the only thing I want, get somebody to pull that out and is like, hey, you can have any of the rest of this stuff you want. If not, put it on the trash. Or I don't know if there are any charities or nonprofits that like clean out people's storage, but just know the longer you put it off, the worse it is going to be.
Oof. Noted.
So that's something to think about.
Oof. That and
Okay.
extending and filing an extension on taxes. I'm just pushing off a lot of stuff. So
Yeah, well, because what is it? The due date, if you're abroad, technically your due date for taxes is June, right? June 15th.
I think, yeah, June. I still filed an extension, but yeah, it was.
Yeah, I mean, they have those processes there for a reason. So why not? So why not use them? All right. Do y'all have any questions for Jamilah? Drop those in the chat. I'm not sure that my voice is going to hold up too much longer. Um,
You're doing good. You're doing.
yeah, it's been a rough couple of days. Um,
I didn't realize
let
too,
me
going
see.
back to your channel, that we also both spent time in China as well. Like I feel like we have a lot of international destinations in common.
When were you in China?
So I guess I minored in Chinese language and literature, so spent a couple semesters there in undergrad, and then taught English after graduating before going to law school. So oh gosh, and then a semester studying Chinese business law in 2016. So a few times, I guess, over a period of time from like 2010 all the way through 2015, 14-ish.
Oh, wow. What part were you in?
Beijing mostly, and then would obviously travel and do all the things. But so it's like, yeah, we have that Honduras in common. There's a lot.
Yeah, I'm still recovering from my time in China, and it's been 5 years.
Yeah.
I'm mostly recovered, but it took a while. It took a while. Okay, I don't see any questions in here. If the things that she's mentioned, if that sounds like, something that you need to get your business to the next level, like I said, all of the contact information is in the description of this video. Um, I really like the idea that somebody looking like you doing this kind of work for the community, because it is the landscape out here is not so great. And so I really appreciate that you're doing this sort of work. Is there anything that we didn't talk about that you think we should mention before we go?
Yeah, I guess a quick shameless plug. We'll be having a virtual event next Tuesday on Zoom. I'll be talking more about Nemity, our process, and answering questions and interviewing a client, Ashley Cleveland, who's been doing super well in the program. So feel free to check that out. I think I sent you the Eventbrite link, but if not, I'll also drop it in there.
Yes.
It's a great opportunity for folks to ask questions live. So.
Okay, so that link is in the description of the video as well.
Yes.
Oh, we had a different question. You're not considering residency because you're in Costa Rica at the moment?
Yes, yeah. I am in the process or considering the digital nomad visa in Colombia, but not in Costa Rica. They only give you 6 months, I think, a year. So, and I qualify with my own business, so another reason for folks to to consider that option if they move abroad.
Okay, all right. Well, thank you for joining us today. Thank you, everybody else, for coming to hang out. Again, please reach out to Numeric Ventures or attend their event if your interest has been piqued and you're like, I want to know more. This event sounds like a good place to start to get a feel for the work that she does and what the process looks like. Okay. Thank you, everybody, for joining us. And I will be back next week after I get as much rest as I possibly can.
All right.
Bye,
Get well
guys.
soon. Thanks.